For my cultural plunge, I decided to attend a Depression Bipolar Support Alliance meeting, or DBSA for short. This was a support group for people suffering with depression, bipolar, and anxiety held at Huntington Hospital in Pasadena. DBSA Pasadena's meetings are held on Tuesday and Thursday nights at 7. I chose this event as my cultural plunge because I wanted a better understanding of people suffering with mental illness. It is such a taboo subject that nobody truthfully discusses their experiences living with mental illness. By attending this meeting, I was hoping to gain an understanding of these mental illnesses and how they affect the people suffering with them. I have had previous exposure to mental illness working with the Blues Project at CSUN during my undergrad. However, I never really had any interactions with anyone suffering with these mental illnesses. I held preconceptions from portrayals of support groups in the media that they are a place where people took their problems to complain about them, and the discussions in these meetings could get heated or that people often broke down into tears. The people at this meeting do not see themselves as any different than anyone else in society. They do not see their mental illnesses as a hindrance to them participating in anything they want. The problems they struggle with are similar to anyone else in society. At the meeting, I heard people struggling to find a job, having trouble with marriages, school anxieties, and issues with kids, all issues that anyone would have to deal with. There seemed to be mixed thoughts about how society viewed them. Some people in the meeting strongly advocated for sharing that they had a mental illness to get support from family and employers. Others did not believe in this. One man's account of sharing that he had bipolar with his employer to explain his behavior backfired on him as his relationship with his employer changed and eventually ended in his employer letting him go. Before this experience, I felt very nervous. I thought, how will people at this meeting judge me for being a person who's never experienced a mental illness that wants to listen in and learn more about people who have? And wondered, will I be seen as ingenuine in my endeavors? I reassured myself leading up to attending this meeting that the people at this meeting had to be open to people interested in healthcare attending them due to the section addressing it on their website. During the meeting, I felt awkward. Seeing people being so open with their problems was eye-opening to me as it is something that I am not used to. During the break, I talked to some people at the meeting. I was told that while being diagnosed with a mental illness was hard at first, they learned to live with it and deal with the symptoms. For some, it took a long time to find the right cocktail of medications, but when they did, it did change their life. Others told me about trips to the hospital during extreme manic or depressive phases and their experience being locked up. This is something that we talked about in the Blues Project about people in extreme distress going to the hospital for help, but I never met someone who experienced it firsthand. After explaining my reasonings for wanting to attend this meeting, I was not seen as how I previously believed I would. I was not seen as ingenuine or judged for wanting to attend a meeting when I did not have a mental illness myself. When the facilitator asked the group if they were comfortable with someone listening in on their group meeting, they were all willing to allow me to stay. At the end of the meeting, the facilitator opened the floor to me to ask any questions I may have for the group. From the answers to my questions, I came to the conclusion that many suffered from a crisis that resulted in their diagnosis, and that the group, medication, and personal therapy had been helpful for them. However, many are between psychologists and psychiatrists due to insurance issues and affordability of these services. My questions were not seen as ignorant or insincere, and were openly answered by multiple people in the group. The neurodevelopmental constructs that were activated during my immersion experience were language and social cognition. The whole experience relied on how people in the room were able to relate to one another and provide support through discussing their ideas they had on the person who had the floor's problems or comments. Relating to one another and reading each other's body language was important to making a meaningful comment, and on the facilitator's part, identifying a good time to move on to the next person who wanted to talk. I have learned from this experience that seeking help for a mental illness through routes different than those discussed in popular media can be beneficial and should advocate for people to seek help from their peers. Understanding what it's like to live with a mental illness will help me in the interactions with parents and students. It has taught me to have more compassion for people suffering with mental illnesses. I have seen the importance of accommodations in these people's lives and will apply this knowledge to working with students who have accommodations in the classroom and will work to my best ability to implement them. Overall, I am glad that I attended my first DBSA meeting and got more experiential information and understanding for advocating for the elimination of the stigma around mental illness.